Welcome to Ink and Flame. I'm your host, Tina Kutras. Today we're talking with Audrey Goldberg Ruoff about her novel, Hopelessly Devoted. Hi, Audrey. How are you?
Hi, Tina. I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to chat about your book. I love the cover art of it. We'll get to that in a bit. So we're going to get started right away and talk a little bit about growing up in Maryland. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So I am close to DC, but not super close to DC. So it's kind of nice because I've lived mostly in the suburbs, but I have also, once I was an adult, lived in the city for a little bit. So I like that proximity. I liked also growing up that you could get on the metro, that's just our public transportation, and head over to DC and visit the museums. This probably is apparent if you're interested in reading my book, but I was kind of a nerdy kid. So I really loved, I think I was maybe 10, there was a big Star Wars exhibit that came to the Smithsonian, and I had my entire family line up outside early to get into that exhibit.
I love that. That would have been so cool.
It was.
So what role did being in Maryland have on your writing or your desire to become a writer?
I would say that we have great public schools and great public libraries, and those are the things that really built me as a writer. I had a lot of wonderful English teachers in middle school and high school, which influenced my decision to become a secondary education teacher. But I also had a lot of wonderful local librarians. So I spent a lot of time going to the library and reading books, and then eventually in school being encouraged to write stories. And that's kind of how I got to where I am. So I credit teachers and libraries.
Nice. You know, when I was young, and I don't think I ever stepped foot in a library, but where we were like in a small community, and we had this library bus, and it was basically just a converted school bus that was like either side, but wall to wall books. And it would show up every week. And that was my library. So it was a lot of fun to have that around and to be able to pop in there whenever. It was like the ice cream truck. You could hear it coming, and it was just library. So,
that's amazing.
Anyway, yeah.
Did it play
fun.
a song?
It was like music that would tell you that it was on its way. It was cool.
That's really cool.
You could sign out your books the same way as a library, but that's the only library I had where I grew up. So anyway, when did you first realize that you wanted to be an author?
So when I was in 6th grade, my English teacher looked at my composition journal, and I remember she said, "Audrey, this is a really good story. You could write stories." And then I liked writing a lot. So in high school, I picked up journalism. I studied that for a little bit. I realized that I wanted to be a teacher because I was looking for a job where I could talk about books all day. So I taught high school English for 15 years. And somewhere in my mid-30s, I'm 38 now, I finally sat down and wrote an entire book. So I had been writing stories since I was 11 and just never finishing them completely. I just didn't get around to it. You know, especially when I first started teaching, that was really busy. And then when I had like very, very young children, that was also really busy. But I like to say that it took me a couple of decades, but I started when I was 11.
That's cool though. Like similar for me. I really liked to write. I mean, I didn't really put anything solid together until much later in life, but I think that it's kind of in us, right? From a very early age, speaking to us on a low key level, you know?
Yes. Just that little nudge, like you have stories to tell.
That's right. And I love it. I love that so many authors have that in common, that they knew early on that they wanted to tell stories. So that's cool. So what have you found your journey in writing Hopelessly Devoted was like as far as the time frame in which you were writing?
So I found that going through the steps to get traditionally published was sort of excruciating, and it took a lot of time. So I had written, I think Hopelessly Devoted was my 7th novel that I wrote to completion. So I watched a lot of them die in the query trenches trying to get an agent. And then there were a couple that just weren't very good. I know sometimes you get writers that say, this is my first novel and I'm publishing this. I will be so honest with you. My first novel it's not great. Like it was good for me because I learned a lot while writing it. But when I go back and look at it now, I'm like, woof, glad we didn't try to publish that one. So that took practice and it took time. And I like people to know that. I think because I am a teacher, like I need you to know, and I need people to know that if it doesn't come out right the first time, you can try again. And if it doesn't it also hopelessly took a lot of editing, a lot of revision, under the guidance of a wonderful editor. I think I had the idea in 2021, wrote it in 2021, 2022, got agented at the end of 2022, and then sold it at the end of 2023. And here we are almost at the end of 2025. So it's been a journey, and it's
Yeah.
kind of grown with me. And that's been fun. It's been really special.
So is that, and some people may want to know, and I'm kind of curious, is that a typical timeline for going through the trad sort of route?
I think it really depends. I've had friends that it's taken them years and years and years. Like, I know people who spent a decade trying to publish a book traditionally and did. I know people that went incredibly quickly, that got agented right away and that also sold right away. I like to think of myself as a slow burn, and just like in romances, which I love to read and write, I love a slow burn, but I also love like an instant connection. So I am really happy for people that hop in and it just works out, like the timing aligns perfectly and all their hard work pays off, but it can vary.
Yeah. So now that you have gone the trad route with Hopelessly Devoted, are there some of those 7 books that you've written that you plan on maybe revising or seeking publishing now that you've gone one way?
I think some of them I would return to. I write both adult and YA. Right now I'm publishing just adult. So definitely, especially the YA books, I'm interested in pursuing that. I love kidlit. I think it's really important. I love to read it. I love to share it with students. So that's a possibility for sure. We did get a contract for a second book set in the same world as Hopelessly Devoted. And that was not one of the previously written ones. So that was the first book that I actually wrote, because the way publishing works, like I have already drafted it, even though it'll be a next fall book. But that was the first book that we sold it, and then I wrote it. So I'd written some sample chapters and an outline and a pitch for it. And I was, prior to that, really a pantser as a writer. So I just would kind of do like a 1-page Google document and then jump right in and start writing and keep going. So it was really an interesting experience to have an outline and follow that outline. And I am so sad to say that it's true what I've been telling kids all these years. Having an outline really does help you to write something and to make it work better more quickly.
I can honestly say I'm definitely a pantser, and I have come to realize that I hate being a pantser. I can admit it, because my story has changed so many times because of it. So I can definitely agree with you that it's not all it cracks up to be sometimes.
Yeah. I was stubborn about it, though. It took having to do it for me to be like, oh no, this really is easier to do if I plan it out ahead of time.
I remember having a podcast with one of my authors, Maddie Rose Andry. She was actually like, I think my second podcast, and she showed me her planning wall, and it was like literally a chalkboard behind her. And it was this massive, she was in this massive room that had like a chalkboard, like the wall paint chalkboard stuff. Anyway, it was the whole length of that room, just littered with notes. And I was like, whoa, that takes some dedication, because my brain just starts going. And the whole concept of taking the time to sort it all out in advance, it seemed so daunting back then. There's definitely
it's hard
to it. Yeah.
Hopelessly began as a couple of big like sticky notes that I just jotted down some ideas on and like smacked on the wall. I don't have anything special set up with a wall display right now. So it was really just literally like on the wall. Some of them falling off. Some of them indecipherable.
What did I write? What did I mean when I wrote this?
It just says Janis Joplin. Like, what could that mean?
Great. I'm sure it made sense when you wrote it.
It did, yeah. Past me new.
So your bio mentions that you have a love for the whimsical and witchy. How has that influenced your writing?
So I have been an Addams Family fan since childhood also. I saw the 90s version and I just loved it so much. And I liked that they took things that were a little bit spooky and creepy and witchy, but it wasn't ever like hard horror. I was never doing a jump scare or like really afraid. And there was this underlying sense of love and family and togetherness. And what I like about the Addams Family is that they love each other hard for exactly who they are. So they are weird, but that's wonderful. And they really accept each other and see each other, and they don't want the people in their family to change. They want them to be who they are. So I really liked that. I felt like that was a sense of belonging. And I felt like it was that weirdness, that kind of witchiness, that otherness that made them special and that like paired well with the warmth. So that's always been a driving factor. I also love Halloween as a celebration and a season. So that's always been a big part of it too.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And okay, so I have to ask him, how do you feel about Wednesday?
I love Wednesday.
Good, because I was not really a big Addams Family fan. I knew who they were, but it was not really something I watched when I was younger. But I love Wednesday. I mean, I think that it did a really good job capturing the vibe and
Yes,
pulling it forward for this generation. So I think it's lots of fun.
it's fantastic. It's a
And it
really well done show.
does. And you're right about it capturing the otherness kind of, you're good to be whoever you are, just be there. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your writing process. I mean, we kind of started by talking about your previous pantser type of behavior, but let's start a little bit more on this book specifically. Did you start with the characters or the world or the plot?
So for this book, it was really the title, which is unusual for me. But I know I've talked about this a lot. I love the show Pushing Daisies so much. And one thing that show got right that I think sometimes shows do really well is they knew who their actors were and they played to the strengths. So when you have a Broadway actor like Kristen Chenoweth on your show, you would give her musical numbers. And so there's this episode where she's singing the song Hopelessly Devoted to You. And Pushing Daisies is shot in this beautiful, like really bright kind of Technicolor looking world, but it also has that undercurrent of there are things that are a little bit more spooky and creepy. Like one of the characters brings people back from the dead for a minute to ask them about how they were killed. So there's that dichotomy, that pairing there too. And I heard that song and I saw her in that moment and I was like, this is in a pie shop, but what if we did a tea shop and it was Hopelessly Tea Voted? And I love a pun so much that I thought I'm going to write a whole book.
I love
because of my love of this pun. And then the characters kind of jumped into my mind, Israel and Vicky at least, kind of fully formed. And I had to just figure out their story because I knew that they had once loved each other and had a misconnection and that they had to somehow get back together. And the rest was for me to figure out. I'm a reformed pantser now, but at the time I was just pantsing my way through.
I love that, reformed. So you kind of gave away the next question, which was to talk a little bit about the title and how you came up with it. How does it relate to the story?
So the story is set in a tea shop called Hopelessly Tea Voted. So the main character, Asriel, his mother had owned this tea shop, and both of his parents are dead at the start of the story. And he has moved away. So he's on the opposite coast, sort of struggling in a career and moving home to become a high school English teacher because I wanted a story where that was somebody's end game. That was their dream job that they ended up realizing they really wanted to do because teaching is a wonderful job. And so Vicky, he doesn't realize it, but Vicky, this girl that he has always loved, has bought his mother's tea shop. And so she's running it. So his sister very conveniently leaves out the details of who the buyer was. So when he shows up to visit his mother's old shop, it's the girl that he missed his shot with who owns it.
I love that. That's so awesome. Okay. I think that's a fantastic, that you've got me. I love it. So you mentioned your inspiration behind Pushing Daisies and the Addams Family. How did you find these influences shape the tone and themes of your novel?
I think that both of them give room for characters, not just who are different and who maybe have the sense of others, but characters who have suffered and had some amount of trauma to also find love and also find happiness. And that was really important to me when writing a romance novel. I love reading all sorts of romances. And I love reading romances where everybody is happy and sunshiny and everything has always gone well. But I also like to see a story where people have really struggled or people have real struggles. So I thought that those two vibes would kind of fit for this character who is grappling with depression and anxiety and with grief, with the loss of his parents. And then for this other character who her parents are alive, but they end up cutting her off because she won't do what they want her to do. So she kind of loses her parents, even though she doesn't physically lose them. And I think that that's a thing that happens to a lot of people, and that families can be difficult. And, that even when we do have families that we love, like we can't control what happens to them. So I wanted to carve out a space for a rom-com that had that funny element to it, that had that romance element to it, but that also kind of said like, hey, if you are struggling with grief or with mental health, there's still a space for you in this world of romance, that you could still see yourself in these characters.
Right. That's beautiful. And I think that that's important. And I love it. You said this was an adult book, right? This
Yes,
one
this is an adult
specifically.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. 18 plus. It's very steamy.
Oh, is that okay? We can get to that later. Balance the spooky and the sparkly elements of your storytelling.
I think a lot about what should go on page and what characters should be reacting to. I did this actually when I was drafting the second book set in this world. It's a Death Becomes Her inspired story. And if you're familiar with Death Becomes Her, there's a lot of, they're immortal, but their bodies kind of fall apart. So I really had this delicate balance of how do I write it so that if there's a teeny tiny loss of a finger, it's not gory and on page, and it's more, we get it through the characters' reactions afterwards. So I do a lot of thinking about what do we show on page and what do we show the characters dealing with that maybe didn't happen, and what do we need to see. But also, I think you can be a little bit scared. Like there is, I think maybe the scariest moment in Hopelessly T-voted is they go to talk to a ghost who's a little bit less human than the other ghosts that they've talked to. And she's a little bit scary. And she kind of has this uncanny moment where her mouth gets really wide and her teeth get really big. And so when I do a scene like that, I really try to write it carefully. And then I try to go back and make sure that it's balanced with maybe they're coping with that fear with some silly jokes, or, you know, the next scene, something really interesting or romantic happens.
Okay. I think that's interesting. And to have those contrasts, it definitely sets a theme that you maintain throughout the storyline.
Yes. And again, I think this is a high school English teacher. I actually teach middle school English now, but a secondary English teacher problem. I love the word juxtaposition. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to apply all the vocabulary terms that I would make you learn in my class. Told you I was a nerd.
I love it. So do you have any writing rituals or habits that you use to keep productive?
So I basically follow the rule of write whenever I can, whenever I have the time to do it. For a while, I was waking up early and writing in the morning before everybody else got up. And then for a while, I was writing at night after everybody went to sleep. When there are times when my kids are in a summer camp, then I will try to use that time and write. And if I can, I try to switch it up. So if I'm writing at home one day, I might try to write from a coffee shop the next day. But really, anywhere that I can find the time and space is when I'm going to write. And that's what's helped me get it done. I think I spent a lot of my life waiting to have the perfect setup to write. And that's just never, I mean, for me, it was never going to happen. It was never going to be perfect. So I just did it wherever I was. And that's how it happened.
Wow. Okay. I've learned that it can be challenging to write in different environments very recently. So I admire that because I have my space, and if I go outside of my space, it's like my brain doesn't come with me. So I admire that.
I do have spots. So if I'm on the couch, there's like one spot on the couch that I like. If I'm in like an office, this is the office/playroom. There's one spot, one corner again that I like. So I guess I carve myself out a spot wherever I am.
That's perfect, though. We all have our seats on the couch or our predetermined spot that we sit at the table. I think it's just habit, but I think it's okay. So what has your experience been like as an author in the romance and fantasy genres?
So I love romance and I love fantasy. And so, of course, I love putting together romantic fantasy. It definitely is a crowded genre, but that just, it makes me happy because it means that there will never be a short supply of those books because there are so many people writing them and so many people reading them. And I think it's nice. It's nice to have the magical blended in with romance.
I think so too. I love I mean, I grew up on a lot of epic fantasy. And matter of fact, I remember the first romance novel I ever read. I had no idea what I was in for, and I had my eyes opened wide. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I had stopped reading almost entirely. And everything I had ever read was probably into the young adult categories, with the exception of that one romance. And then when I came back to reading, it was because my massage therapist had recommended Sarah J. Maas. And I was like, okay, let's go. And, like just about everybody else that reads the romantasy genre.
So as a kid, like I said, I went to the library a lot, and we didn't have tote bags in that time. I would carry like plastic shopping bags and just fill them with as many books as I was allowed to check out. And so I would go through these specific things that I was interested in. And for a while, I got really interested in Arthurian legend, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Love that. And I, as maybe a 12-year-old, discovered the adult Arthurian legend. There's a lot of very sexy, very adult things that I was reading at my local public library. I don't think it did me any harm. It just made me even more interested in legend and storytelling. So I have kind of always loved that romantasy space. And I had a similar thing happen where there was a period of time where I wasn't reading a whole lot. I was teaching high school, so I was reading the books that I was teaching my students, which is nice because it means at least I was reading something. But I was working so much that I didn't have as much time to read. And for me, it was contemporary romance that kind of reminded me that I could pick something up. I think it was Emily Henry, that I could pick something up and dive into it, and that it would be okay to sometimes do a little bit better with work-life balance and set things aside, that my students would be okay if I didn't get the essays back to them like right away. Like they could wait a little bit. Would they complain about it? Maybe, but it's nice for me to not be, every night grading papers late into the night. So romance for me was kind of this reminder that we don't have to always be grinding and working in order to be valuable, and doing things for the joy of doing them is as much an important part of being a valuable member of society as like really working hard at your job. Because I love my job, and so I really put a lot into it. But romance books reminded me that I could also take things for me, like just for me.
I think that's a fantastic lesson.
Absolutely.
And probably one that a lot more people need to hear. Should be on the back of every romance novel.
Yes. It's like a prescription.
You too can enjoy life.
Yes. You too can have happiness.
That's right.
Moments of it.
So how do you handle feedback and criticism, especially when it comes to your creative work?
So I don't look at my Goodreads reviews if they are under, so I think I have it set so I can just see the 5-star ones. And I don't read the reviews on NetGalley. I am a person who works really hard on the things that I craft. This book is the absolute best that I could make it. And I had a wonderful professional editor who helped me with it. And I think a lot of people in reader spaces, they deserve to have their opinions. They deserve to have their thoughts on the book. But I want to see somebody like really trashing it. I think that would hurt my feelings. I'll be honest. Like I'm a human. And I also have read a lot of reviews of other books where people are making suggestions about how the book could be changed and how it could be better. By the time you get a book in your hands and you're reading it, it is done. It is out of my hands. That book is in the world, and it is who it is. I mean, I'm just talking about it like it's a person. It is what it is.
To you, it is.
To me, it is, yes. So I don't read reviews. If people tag me in them, that's fine. That's really nice. Everybody has been so kind so far, and I have not yet been tagged in any negative reviews. So I appreciate that if you're listening, because I do, I teach literature. So I think it's important for us to like different books. Like I don't care for every single book that I read. So I try to respect those spaces by staying out of them.
Yeah.
For readers and for myself.
I had another author that I interviewed, and she said, those reviews aren't for me. They're for people who want to read the book. And I thought that was great advice as an author or as somebody who is becoming an author and getting ready to go through those processes, I definitely took that to heart and tried to keep that with me because I think
It's
that's really,
important.
really good advice. So, speaking of advice, what was the best advice you have been given since you started writing?
That comparison is the thief of joy, which is
Mm.
good advice for everyone. And I've been really lucky to have a lot of writers that are willing to reach back and to help me, and to provide guidance if I've asked questions. I've been really lucky to have a great team helping me. My editor's fantastic. But I have a friend who really called me in when I was feeling stressed about something early on in the process. I think it's when things were not working for me yet. And I realized that nobody else can write the book that you write. And there are going to be people out there, agents, editors, readers, that it's not the book for them. And that doesn't mean that it's not an important book. And that doesn't mean that it's not a special book. And publishing, especially traditional publishing, but I think this maybe applies to other paths too, though I haven't taken those myself. It's a lot about hard work and it's a lot about talent, but it's also about timing. And sometimes people get really lucky with the timing and sometimes people get really unlucky with the timing and sometimes in between. So it could be easy to compare yourself to people that you perceive to be really lucky or really fortunate. But you also never know, like I never know what really goes into somebody else's life or somebody else's day to day or somebody else getting that book published. So I think it's really important to keep your eyes on your own page and think of it like what's the best way that you can write your book, because you wouldn't want anybody else to tell that story. Like that's a story that's specific to you, that's unique to you.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love that. And it's so very true. And you often hear people talk about, somebody needs your story or whatever. But that perspective of it and understanding that it's yours and what you have to offer is unique. I love that too. That's really nice. So, Hopeless Devoted is set in a charming town of Hollow Cross. I love that. What inspired this setting and how did you bring it to life?
So Hello Cross is a fictional town in Vermont, and I was born in Seattle, but grew up in Maryland. But my best friend got married in Vermont, and I went up there for her wedding and some years ago, and it was just so charming. I just you ever visit a place and you just fall in love with it? And
Yeah.
so since then I've gone back a lot to visit. Sometimes we go up there. I don't ski personally, but I'm really good at sitting and having a cocktail or a cup of hot cocoa or coffee or tea while somebody else skis. And I also just love that it's beautiful. You could visit lots of like natural parks. So I fell in love with Vermont because my friend got married there. And I think I had been kind of cooking. I need to write something set here since I visited for that.
Nice. That my sister and I were just having a conversation about our top 5 bucket list places, and Vermont was on both of our lists. So I'll probably make it there someday. I think that's
It's
awesome. And how close is Hollow Cross to the place that you were?
Well, there's magic in it. So in that way, not that close.
Who
But it
knows?
is kind of like the small town vibes of, you could walk down a street and see a lot of different stores. I think we have this in cities too, really, like where it's an area where you can get to a lot of things that you're familiar with. I wanted it to be walkable because I love a walkable place. And that part, maybe I tweaked a little bit. Definitely in Vermont, you would probably have to drive in. Although
Yeah.
there's some, they commute from the Hart Manor to the main street of the town. But I definitely changed the amount of time that it would take to get from places a little bit, but it's based there. Like that was
The
the
bones.
template. Yeah. And then that was the bones. And then I laid down the rest.
Nice. It's very similar, I guess, a little bit in the sense of some of the sort of the Christmas Hallmark kind of feel. Yeah.
Yeah. That holiday. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So, can you share more about the main characters, Azriel and Vicky?
Yes. So Azriel is failing at screenwriting in Los Angeles and realizes that he really doesn't want to do that. So he does this thing that I think a lot of adults do, where he has had this dream for so long that he's just been kind of pushing toward it and it's not making him happy. So he returns home after his parents have died and he's taken this job teaching high school English at his old high school, which he swore he would never return to. But the job actually makes him really happy. It's just that there is a magical mystery afoot in town, and he is a witch. And Vicky, who buys his mother's shop, is almost a perfectly normal, bubbly girl next door, except that she has been cursed so that she can summon the dead by touching an object that was significant to them. So his parents' ghosts have warned Vicky about something going wrong in Hallowcross. Something's rotten in Hallowcross. And he is both taking on this new job, which is, by the way, a very stressful job and involves a lot of work. And he also has to solve this magical mystery with his childhood sweetheart, who he's trying not to have feelings for anymore and failing.
So does somebody know, like ask him to get involved in the first place, or does it just fall on him because he has because he's a witch?
It falls on him because he's a witch and there is a witchery council, and it falls on him because it's Vicky coming to talk to him about his parents giving her this warning. And so he does also want to deal with his grief. And because it's the ghosts of his parents warning her, he can't see them, but she can. So it's also kind of like a one last connection to the people that he's lost.
Oh, wow, that's beautiful. I definitely love that. The book explores themes of love, nostalgia, and poetic justice. How did you weave these themes into the storyline?
So I like a second chance romance a lot. So that's where I think the love and the nostalgia come in. And poetic justice, I feel that writing magic set in a world like our own, but a little bit nicer, is an opportunity to get the kind of satisfaction that we can't always have in real life. When somebody is cruel to other people or is hurtful, they don't always get what's coming to them. They don't always have the life that they deserve in reality. But in a magical world, you get to play with that. I wanted it to be like our world, but a little bit better. And not so much better that everything was just perfect, but just enough so that people could get their comeuppance and they could have exactly the life they deserve if they were doing harm to others.
So is this book a one-off? Is it a one and done, or will it have a sequel?
So the other book in the same world is not a sequel. It's a standalone companion. So you would be able to, it is a standalone, Hopelessly Devoted. You'd be able to read them in any order. Although if you read Hopelessly and you like the characters in Hopelessly, they will make an appearance in Vengefully Matched, which is it's slated for next fall, and it's going to be set in the same world.
Okay. So they do like cameos.
Yes, they have cameos.
I love that. That's such a fun way to do it too. And I find that people will look for them when they know that that's kind of in the cards, right? So yeah. So if Hopelessly Devoted were adapted, I ask this all the time, if it was adapted to a movie or of a TV series, do you have a dream cast or anybody that you would love to see?
I do, yes.
Oh, yay.
Although it's kind of like a combination for some of them. So because of Pushing Daisies, I really had thought about Az and Vicky as Lee Pace and Anna Friel from Pushing Daisies. But for Azriel, I also thought about Logan Lerman a little bit, older Logan Lerman, and Adam Brody a little bit, younger Adam Brody. And for Vicky, she is a little bit Taylor Swift, like Swiftie inspired. But I think she could also be like, if we were doing pop stars, there's a little bit of Sabrina Carpenter and that like spiciness and defiance in her.
Yeah.
But I was also listening to a lot of Fleetwood Mac. So she definitely has this kind of Stevie Nicks flower child quality to her too. And then for Priscilla, who is Azriel's sister, and who's the main character of Vengefully Matched, I really saw her as Aubrey Plaza or Jenna Ortega, because I think both of those people like could do Wednesday Addams. And that's kind of how I envisioned her.
I love both of them.
Me too.
Those are great choices. So are there any Easter eggs or hidden details in the book that readers might not notice on their first read?
Yes, there are a lot of Taylor Swift references. Sorry.
Okay, that's fun.
I think so. There are a lot of Pushing Daisies nods. If you were really like a deep cut Pushing Daisies fan and Addams Family, like you will see moments there. There are some nods to the fact, like some of the things that happen do kind of set up for there could be another. You might want to know what happens in some of the situations. Like everything is tied up at the end of Hopelessly, but there are a few people that you might be wondering about, that I think if you read it knowing that there's going to be a companion novel, you'd be like, oh, I bet we get to find out a little bit more about this person.
Yeah. That's awesome. I like that is it kind of gives you that clean slate to start that second book, but at the same time, readers that are excited for that second book get to look forward to it. So that's fun.
Yes.
So the companion novel, Vengefully Matched, can you give us any other details about it that might be fun to know?
Yes, it's a rivals to lovers sapphic romance that is for people who love Wednesday and Enid and are kind of like, I think those two when they grow up should get together. So it definitely has very much Wednesday vibes, but also it's very inspired by Death Becomes Her. So there is a little bit of a subplot about the perils of immortality and why one might not want to live forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the two main characters are rivals for president of the Witchery Council. And Priscilla Hart has actually lost this election to this other woman, and she hates her for it. And the other woman hates her for running a campaign to try to get that spot. So they start off pranking each other hard. Like the beginning of the book is they're doing a lot to undermine the other one. So I really did want to play with how do we do rivals to lovers? Like we have to see that rivalry, which was really fun. And I also wanted to play with Death Becomes Her because I really like the movie and there's a Broadway show of that now too. And I just, I like that idea of like the kind of like wonky horror again.
Yeah.
It's not like, even though in Death Becomes Her, like body parts pop off because they're falling apart, it's never gory. It's never like gushing blood or anything that would really be too much. So I think it toes that line of spooky sparkly.
And do you find that the banter and things like that is there with these two books? Do you find that you've captured some of the fun conversations?
Yes, I hope so. I like to think so.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite character to write in either of the two?
That's such a hard question.
I know, eh?
I think I'm going to have to go with Asriel.
Oh, really?
Asriel Hart. Yes. Yeah. I just love writing him. He pines so hard. I just love all that pining, and I did make him suffer a little bit. He almost finally gets together with this girl that he's loved forever, and then they're cursed so they can't touch without him being immolated and bursting into flames. So I make him suffer, but I promise there's a good payoff.
Okay.
But I also, he is a character that deals with anxiety and depression, and those are things that I struggle with myself. So he felt really important to me to write.
Yeah. And do you have any messages that you hope people take from the book, specifically Hopelessly Devoted?
Yes. I hope that people reading it understand that no matter what you're going through, you are enough. And also you are not too much to be loved. Like you are enough, even if you are struggling with your mental health, even if you feel like there's some part of your identity that your family or the world around you is not accepting. You are enough exactly the way that you are. And you are not too much the way you are. And I hope that you hold out for the kind of love where somebody really sees that in you.
Right. That's a beautiful message. And I think, why am I not surprised it's a black cat?
This is Salem.
Really? That's such a cool name. That was also on our list of five or less places that we want to see in the States. That was one of them, Salem.
I love Salem too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been, so I can't really speak to having had experience there, but I think it would be a very cool place to go, specifically in October. I mean, call me cliche, Absolutely. But I'm okay with it. So what was the last book that you read and loved?
That's such a hard question.
I know it is because you're a writer, and I find it's really hard to write and read at the same time.
I read Gabriella and His Grace by Liana De La Rosa, and that was really good. I also read The Undercutting of Rosie and Adam by Megan Bannon. That's the third book in that series, and that was really good. Isn't It Obvious by Rachel Rania Katz. That one comes out in October, but I got to read an arc, and that was really good too. Nice. I could just keep going, so I'll stop there.
So you definitely take some time for yourself. That's pretty amazing.
I try.
Because I find specifically, did you find that you slowed down at all when you were writing? Because I find my brain goes constantly and I can't focus very well. So I'd like to hear your input.
through seasons of writing, and sometimes I have to scale it back. So there was a point in writing hopelessly where I had this day where I just wrote for, I think it was maybe like 14 hours.
Wow.
And I wrote way too much. I'm a fast typer, but it was something like 17,000 words in one day. And then I was so tired and so wired that I forgot my password for my computer. And so I spent an hour on the phone with Apple support the next day, just crying hysterically because I thought I had lost all this work.
Oh, wow.
I draft in Scrivener and I didn't know if I hadn't like backed it up. I felt like I couldn't get to it. And the very wonderful man at Apple support helped me out. And I got back into my computer, but I said to myself, like, that was too much. That was, if I wrote like that all the time, it would make me miserable. It would make me burn out. So I try to stop myself when I start to feel that tension of like, oh my God, if I lost what I wrote today, it would ruin everything. And this would never be a book. And that's been a better way to balance.
Yeah, I would say so. I couldn't imagine. I use Dabble, so similar type of program, I think, where it saves it all for you. But I couldn't imagine the stress, 17,000 words. Wow. Okay.
I don't usually write that much in a day. Usually it's like 1,000 or 2,000, but there was a part of Hopelessly that I was really excited to get to. I won't give it away, but it's good. And so I was like, I gotta get to this. And I just kept going. And that wasn't a good mental health day. It probably wasn't a good physical health day. So no more of that.
I just had a cartoon image of, your hair a mess and,
Yes. That's
food all over
accurate.
your shirt. And anyway, it's how the brain goes sometimes. If you could have tea with any fictional character, who would you choose?
I'm going to go with Anne Elliot from Persuasion.
Okay.
I really like Persuasion by Jane Austen. And I also really like the movie versions of that, including the new one that people sometimes hate on. I think it's great. But I want to know exactly how she got persuaded to give up Captain Wentworth, because he's such a great hero. And I like that it's a second chance romance. That was probably like the first second chance romance I really fell in love with. It's an old one, but I want to know, Anne. I want to know how that went down.
I think that's cool. So, coffee or tea when you're writing? I mean, hopelessly devoted, but what's your preference?
I want to say both, the meme that's like both is good, but I think the answer, if I have to pick, is coffee, believe it or not. I love coffee, but I love tea too.
How do you drink your coffee?
I drink it like candy. So it has.
So you don't like coffee, you like tea and sweetener or sugar.
I like, it's got lots of milk, creamer in it. It's got sugar, flavoring. Yep.
That's funny.
It's close to candy.
When first time I saw that t-shirt, turns out I don't like coffee. I love cream and sweetener or cream and sugar. I thought that was very appropriate because that's how I drank coffee at the time. I think that's cool. So favorite writing spot, home, office, cafe. What's your favorite?
I think home.
Any specific room or any habits that you have to have happen? Music, quiet, or what do you love?
Yes, I need to have several beverages, and then it doesn't matter where I am. I would like a cup of coffee or tea. I would like a ice water, and then a sparkly water,
So you have like a little menu.
Yes,
That's
and
cool.
then I can be anywhere.
I got into the habit of listening to on YouTube, the 3-hour sort of immersion music. It's never any singing. It's just the sounds and wearing this headset. And then somewhere along the line, I stopped listening to the music, but I still put on the headset. It's like I'm trying to block out the world. I just need it to be quiet. It's kind of fun.
I do make playlists usually when I'm planning out a book or pantsing a book, as I was doing at the beginning. And so I will listen to a playlist, but I'm very weird. Well, I'll get a song stuck on my head for a scene, and then I'll need to listen to that song over and over and over again to finish writing that scene. So I'll have a playlist, but I sometimes will just be like looping a song over and over again.
Right. Gets you in the mood, or it helps you to visualize, or drowns out the voices in your head. So which of your characters would you most and least like to meet in real life?
I think I would most like to meet Priscilla Hart, Asriel's sister, because she is a witch, but she also has a really good sense of humor. Like she loves a good prank, and I think she'd be fun to hang out with. And I think least, probably some of the ghosts that they interact with. Again, there's a ghost named Tina. She's really only in the story for a little bit, but as I wrote her, I was like, she scares me a little bit. And I like that for her, but like, I don't want to meet her, especially not in a dark graveyard. So yeah, no Tina for me. I'm sorry. I know that that's your name.
That's okay.
Promise I did not know that when I wrote it.
So last question, and probably the most important, is where can people find your books?
So they should be, I hope, anywhere that you could buy books. Try your local indie bookstore, of course, but Barnes & Nobles will have them. You can order them on the internet from bookshop.org or from Amazon. Hopefully you can also get the audiobook. It's got really wonderful narrators if that's your jam.
I do like audiobooks.
Me too.
Because, like I said, if I'm sitting and reading a book, I really struggle. But if I can sit and listen, especially when driving, I love audiobooks.
Absolutely. A good commute book.
That being said, you have a fantastic cover. So do you want to show everybody what it looks like?
Yes. So I have the most wonderful cover artist. Her name is Camilla Gray, and she just captured Azrael and Vicky so perfectly. I think maybe my favorite thing about the cover is that it's got this little teapot that says a novel, which is just so cute.
Yeah.
And then the shop behind it, a little bit of magic, and Emily Lickinson, who's the cat in the book.
That's awesome. I think that's a great cover, and it looks fun. You know what I mean? Like if it was,
I got so lucky.
Yeah, it's really nice, and it's
not
quite a good size book.
Hard on it. Yes,
I was a little surprised when you showed me the size of it. It's a good size book for people who devour them like my sister does. She reads way too fast.
I feel that.
So she would probably love that, because one of her biggest frustrations is when a series isn't finished. So your style of writing is right up her alley. So I'll have to make sure I point her in your direction. So aside from those two books, do you have any other stories that you have in the works or mentally starting to kind of craft out a little bit that people can look forward to?
I do. I have some other things going on that I'm maybe not ready to talk about yet, but there are other things in the works.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's exciting to know that, you have kind of this wonderful world, whether or not the other books are also set in that world. But I think it's pretty awesome to know that there's going to be more than just the two. So that's lots of fun.
Well, thank you.
So thank you very much for hanging out with me tonight, Audrey, and for, getting the chance to talk about your books and teaching me about them, because I think they sound very exciting. And I love the one book and then the next one, but still in the same world. So there's, these cameos and opportunities to still get a glimpse of those characters that you might have fallen in love with in the first book. So I think that's so exciting. So thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Thank you.